additional credits a town. Bonus credits are additional credits a town can receive toward fulfilling their affordable housing obligation by developing specific types of housing considered beneficial to the community, like mixed income developments, senior housing, or transit-oriented developments beyond the standard requirements, thereby reducing their affordable housing obligation. I'm going to give you an example of how this could work. One way it could work is, let's say municipality Z has a prospective need obligation to build 500 affordable units in round 4. Let's say town Z decides to use their trust fund money to purchase a 50-unit garden apartment complex. The town then takes these garden apartments and transforms them into affordable units. Those 50 apartments would each get 1 bonus credit, which means the whole complex would count as 100 affordable units of town's 500-unit prospective need obligation. This is just one way that towns can utilize bonus credits in A4S50, and bonus credits can lower a town's affordable housing quota by as much as 25%. Now, if affordable housing is something you'd like to advocate for, the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey has information that highlights how affordable housing can strengthen and improve neighborhoods and communities, and you can find that and lots more really good information at their website. Now, there are many affordable housing best practices. We're going to take a look at a few of them now. Redevelopment and adaptive reuse emphasizes using already developed structures and land and repurposing them for use as housing. Office parks, malls, and other commercial spaces can be repurposed in this way. The thought is that doing this can protect and preserve our undeveloped land. We can also turn something that's become an eyesore, like an abandoned strip mall, into housing that improves a neighborhood's appearance. Transit-oriented development, TOD, is building housing near public transit stations. Creating these is a way to encourage use of mass transit and public transport, so we utilize it more and rely less on using cars. This is good for our air and environment also because it encourages using mass transit and supports shopping locally by increasing foot traffic in these neighborhoods. This in turn can help support small businesses and even help create new businesses and jobs in these communities. Green building practices encompass everything from mitigating stormwater and flooding problems in development, as well as energy efficient design, incorporating green spaces, and designs that encourage walking and cycling. Smart growth is a planning theory that maximizes the creation of sustainable communities that preserve open space and minimize urban sprawl and overdevelopment. Universal design allows housing to be utilized by all, regardless of their age or ability. It can also support aging in place. AARP is one of several organizations that advocates for this and supports it through initiatives like livable communities and communities for all ages. There are also many creative affordable housing solutions, such as ADUs, which stands for accessory dwelling units. These are smaller, separate living spaces that include their own kitchen, bathroom, living, and sleeping spaces that can be built on the same lot as a single-family home. New Jersey is appropriating $10 million for towns to help defray the costs of creating these. And this image that you see on this slide shows the various configurations that ADUs can take. Higher set-asides is another best practice. The idea is to increase the ratio of affordable housing units to market rate ones. So instead of the typical ratio right now, which is 1 affordable unit for every 4 market rate units, the idea is to increase the ratio of affordable housing units, make it a 1-to-3 ratio, or maybe even a 1-to-2 ratio. In addition to New Jersey's Affordable Housing Trust Fund, there are many other funding sources and grants to help defray the cost of building affordable housing. U.S. Housing and Urban Development has a housing trust fund that provides grants to states to produce and preserve affordable housing for extremely low and very low income households. New Jersey Department of Community Affairs has a small projects funding grant for affordable housing projects of 25 units or less. The New Jersey Housing and Mortgage Finance Agency has affordable housing programs as well that are available to private, for-profit, and nonprofit housing developers and public housing authorities that are capable of developing and managing multifamily housing developments. Those various organizations can apply for these. There's also something called a neighborhood revitalization tax credit that can help defray the cost of building affordable homes. Community development corporations, also known as CDCs, have built and redeveloped over 21,000 affordable homes for New Jersey residents. And there are also many private grants and funding sources. One such example is AARP's Community Challenge grants, which are part of their Livable Communities initiative. Now, we had many experts who, over the course of this year, advised our Affordable Housing Committee along the way. Thank you to all of them for educating us and for assisting us in the creation of this presentation. And thank you to the members of our Affordable Housing Committee who helped to compile and create this presentation. Thank you to New Jersey League of Women Voters Social Justice Chair Eileen Kahn, and also to Maria Huego, who is the co-chair of the Fair and Affordable Housing State Subcommittee. And now we're going to get started with our panel discussions, but before we do that, at the beginning of this PowerPoint, we showed the League's policy positions supporting affordable housing. We also have policy positions that support protecting our environment, our air and our water, and preserving open space. New Jersey is the most densely populated of the 50 states, so it's vital that we safeguard these. It's also important for our economy that residents have affordable places to live. When people don't have to spend exorbitant amounts on housing, they'll have disposable income for dining out, or for shopping, or for other activities. This helps local businesses to thrive when people have disposable income to spend, and it can also support the creation of new businesses, which in turn can create new jobs. Done right and done smartly with planning and thought and purpose, affordable housing can be part of a virtuous cycle. This obligation can become an opportunity that can strengthen and benefit our towns and communities and make New Jersey a better place for all of us who call the Garden State our home. And now it's time for our panel discussion and questions.
Sure.
Okay, so our panelists are Matthew Hirsch, Vice President of Policy and Advocacy for the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, and Scott Millard, the CEO of Passaic County Habitat for Humanity. Matthew and Scott, could you each please get us started with a brief statement? Matthew, why don't you go first, and then Scott, you can follow him.
Sure. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Scott, and thank you to everybody on the call today. It's really great to see some of you. I see some recognizable names, and it's really important that we all understand that we all represent different towns. We're all in this together, and that's also important. That it's not just municipality by municipality, but the impact really is made on a regional and state level. So, as Diane said, and that was an amazing overview. Because I think it really articulated the flexibility, the nuance, and the creativity that A4 S50 provide. And one of the role that I hope to really represent here today is speaking on behalf of our membership, that is the Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey. We are a statewide not-for-profit organization that advocates for the creation of affordable homes, tenant protections, and ways to end homelessness, and simply to end housing stability, and also close the racial wealth gap through affordable homes and home ownership. What we really want to our membership is composed of community development corporations, among others. But as Diane mentioned, CDCs. I think it's really important to start off with how the nonprofit development community really can fit in seamlessly and speak to the needs of municipalities as those municipalities are putting together their fair housing plans. This legislation, really can really help address the severe shortage of affordable homes in New Jersey that residents are facing. And it's also a moral and legal obligation to build homes in every community, because people in New Jersey, whether they're from here or whether they come here, they deserve to live in a safe, stable, and affordable home. All of the data, including the data that Diane just showed, shows that housing is a critical social determinant of health, and that evictions and foreclosures harm the physical and mental well-being of people impacted by them. So the reason why, one of the main benefits of this fourth round of affordable housing is also to put that kind of upward pressure on the housing market. We have a severe housing deficit here in New Jersey. So when people complain about, when you hear concerns about housing price, not complain, it's a very legitimate concern about housing prices skyrocketing. We see rents skyrocketing 30, 40, 50% over the course of a year or 2 years. And we see a massive deficit in affordable homes. The National Low Income Housing Coalition alone estimates that we have over 200,000. That we have more than a 200,000 deficit of affordable homes based on market alone, not just what the law requires, but based on just the market. So you would have to work for an average 2-bedroom rental. The average minimum wage earner would have to work 2.5 jobs in order to afford that. In order to afford an average 2-bedroom rental a year. And that is not only unreasonable, but it certainly fits the state's definition of unconscionable. So again, the methodology and the processes that have been in place since former Governor Christie gutted COA is working better than COA ever did. And that's why we urge the legislature to codify this new methodology that Diane outlined as drafted in S50 and A4. What we want to do is we really want to showcase the very seasoned, very skilled and talented nonprofit developers who can help municipalities walk through their housing plan and really showcase the different types of housing that A4 S50 outlines, and can also illustrate how to seamlessly integrate affordable homes within the community, within existing infrastructure, and within a street grid, and without necessarily selling the farm in order to get that inclusionary number that's going to meet your obligation. That's not the best planning. Obviously, there are opportunities to build larger scale developments where you can get inclusionary homes out of larger scale developments. But the beauty of this law is that it really speaks to the strengths of the nonprofit CDC community and the type of housing that they're able to do. I'm talking about single family to 3-family conversions. I'm talking about 5 to 25 unit affordable homes. I'm talking about accessory dwelling units, as Diane just outlined. They know how to stack capital for 100% affordable developments, which also gets you a bonus credit. So there is a lot to understand about this law, but there's a lot that seasoned developers can really come to the table with municipalities and showcase kind of the type of housing that they do and where we can fill in some of these holes without being so massively disruptive that we need a large tract of developable land, which obviously in New Jersey is increasingly rare. So I did want to just drive that home. We're here to advocate for our members, and our main role at this point, now that this is the law of the land, is to really broker that relationship between municipalities and nonprofit builders who can sit at the table and really hash out the types of housing that they want and what fits and what doesn't. So that's my opening, Diane. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Great overview. And thanks, Diane, so much for your great introduction to this really important topic. My name is Scott Millard. I have the great pleasure of being the CEO of Passaic County Habitat for Humanity. And I am also a proud board member of the Housing Community Development Network of New Jersey. So put a plug in for Matt and the entire team at the network and all the great work that they do. Thanks for all of that. And also, if you're not familiar with the Habitat for Humanity Network, what I am going to speak on tonight is certainly what we are doing in Passaic County as the Passaic County affiliate for Habitat for Humanity. but regardless of where you are from in the state tonight, there is a Habitat affiliate that serves your county. We have 15 affiliates in the state of New Jersey, and we cover all 21 counties. So the types of solutions I'm going to be sharing with and any questions I answer, variations of that are true, and those solutions will work any place in the state of New Jersey, not just in Passaic County. So I want to kind of get us started with my piece of it with a little bit of framing, which helps us as we advocate for affordable housing in the different spaces and places that we occupy and where we talk about this. And the first thing is a question for us all to contemplate about who needs affordable housing. Who is this law for? And so I just want you to stop and think about that for a second, is who needs affordable housing? Who pops into your mind when you think about the need for affordable housing? And now I want to ask you is if you thought about yourself when you answered that question. Did you think about your family? I think the first thing we have to recognize is affordable housing is about each and every one of us. We all need affordable housing. So when that question is asked of who needs affordable housing, the answer is I need affordable housing. We each should raise our hands when asked the question, do you need affordable housing? We all need it. The only difference is some of us already have it. Because as Diane talked about in her overview, if we have housing that we can afford, that is we are spending less than 30% of our income on, we have affordable housing. And so we have the solution already. And because we have it, we should now advocate for others who still need that affordable housing solution. And when we push that a little bit further and we really get to the crux of what this is about, we should ask ourselves another set of questions. Is how many of us, if we were in the housing market today, could afford to buy the house we live in? How many of us, if we were in the housing market today, could afford to buy a house in the town that we live in? How many of our children, if we have kids who are right in that age where they are looking for housing, how many of our children could afford to buy a house in the town they grew up in? Right? How many of our, if we have younger children, how many of our children's teachers can afford to live in the town that they teach in? This is what we're talking about when we're talking about affordable housing. And these are the solutions that people were fighting for solutions. We're fighting for our kids. We're fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for the teachers in our towns, for our firefighters, for our EMS workers, for our police officers, for the server in our restaurant, for the care worker in the assisted living center that cares for our aging parents. These are the people that we need affordable housing for, that we need to fight for. And when we start to put faces to this, right, it becomes personal and it's not about them. And that's where we have to change this conversation. It's not about them. It's not about that person. It's not about those people. This conversation is about each and every one of us. And so I'll go on with one more little kind of prod for us is how many of us live in subsidized housing? So what I will suggest to you is if you own a home today in America, you live in subsidized housing. So you should raise your hand and say, I live in subsidized housing. And you say, well, no, I don't. Well, yes, you do. Yes, I do. Right? Because, right, it's about tax season. Tax season's rolling around. And when tax season rolls around in the next month or two, I'm fortunate enough to be a homeowner, and I will itemize my deductions and I will write off my mortgage interest and I will write off my property taxes. That is a government subsidy that helps our housing, the government subsidizing our housing to be more affordable. And last year, the federal government spent $70 billion subsidizing homeowner housing through the mortgage interest rate deduction. Last year, the federal government spent $67 billion subsidizing Section 8 housing. So the federal government is spending more money subsidizing the housing of homeowners, market rate homeowners, than it is spending subsidizing rent for the poorest people in our country through the Section 8 voucher system. And so I bring these points up to level the playing field. And so when we have these conversations, when we advocate, we can say we're advocating for ourselves, we're advocating for our families, we're advocating for our communities. And we are either currently the beneficiaries of affordable housing, or we need to be beneficiaries of affordable housing, right? We are all part of this. And once we recognize that, we can change the dynamics of this conversation that we need to have. And so our work is Habitat for Humanity. I love A4S50 because, as Diane gave us a great overview, as Matt talked about, A4S50, for the first time in our state's history, we've been working on affordable housing through the Mount Laurel Doctrine for 51 years now. And round 4 is the first time through the A4S50 legislation that we are prioritizing home ownership. And we are giving municipalities bonus credits to construct affordable ownership units and giving bonus credits for 100% affordable development, right? So we can really think about smart development, because I know density is a huge concern in many municipalities, right? 100% affordable projects and home ownership projects help us reduce density. They help us deal with long-term wealth generation. And the other plug I will give for affordable home ownership is that affordable home ownership projects become revenue generators for the municipalities where they are built. We often hear the stigma, and one of the complaints about affordable housing is, well, the affordable housing is going to cost our community money. We're going to have to provide services for this. And this is an outlay of resources that will drain the resources of our municipalities. If we embrace ownership opportunities, those homeowners are homeowners. And just like if you have the privilege of being a homeowner as I do, you pay property taxes. People who buy affordable ownership units also pay property taxes. Just in Passaic County alone, we've generated, through the housing we have produced, $30 million in tax revenue for the municipalities where we have developed housing. It's a significant financial benefit to the communities. So we turn unproductive properties into income-producing properties for the municipality. So these are just different things that really make this version of this law really powerful. So I'm just so appreciative of being here tonight. Look forward to answering your questions, and thrilled to pass it over. I know he missed the introduction, but to Al Tariq from the Fair Share Housing Center to introduce himself.
Good evening, everyone. Unfortunately, I'm having connectivity issues. I don't know what happened, but I'm not that technologically savvy, so therein lies part of the problem. Good evening. My name is Al Tariq Witcher, and I'm the Managing Director of External Affairs at Fair Share Housing. Quite frankly, full disclosure, this is my 3rd week on the job, so I'm new to the territory, sort of, kind of, but I am in this space where I have personally been subjected to discrimination, redlining, some of the other issues that A4S35, some of the issues that right now we are working to address so fervently. I am a property owner in the city of Newark. I have 2 income-producing properties, but in prior roles, I would advocate for affordable housing. We right now, and I really can't even follow Scott Matthews' presentations because you guys actually covered it all. So you kind of left me nothing to say, but I am willing on here to answer any questions that are associated with this. But I just want to let everybody know that there's no evidence that affordable housing disrupts current housing trends that are in place in a lot of the towns that are fighting against affordable housing, that it's a win-win for all involved, and people should embrace it much more acceptably than they have in the past. And with that, I'll end and open the floor for questions.
Thank you, Matthew, Scott, and Altari. Does anyone have a question for any of our experts? You can type it in the chat, or if you'd like to unmute to ask your question, you can do that now. I'd recommend typing a question into the chat if you've got any. I'd like to ask a question of our panel experts. Are we seeing more redevelopment? Are we seeing, do you think as a result of A4S 50, we're going to see more redevelopment? Are we going to see, properties that have been vacated, renovated, and turned into affordable housing? Or do you think as a result of this law? Altariq, do you want to answer that question first?
Yes, I will. Yes, we do anticipate seeing more redevelopment. Right now, there's about a 230,000 shortage of affordable homes in the state. And I think that's a conservative estimate. So yes, there will be definitely some redevelopment, some repurposing of some certain areas. We will see that, but it's only just to catch up to the pace that we should have had in the past. Right now, we're so far behind. Had the Mount Laurel doctrine been fully embraced over the course during its inception, and we not had this decades-long fight, we would not be in a rush to try to play catch up with affordable housing units.
Thank you, Altariq. Matthew, do you want to add anything to that?
I think Scott may have a better answer than me.
I don't know if I have a better answer than you, Matt, but I think it's a great question, Diane. I think it's going to be a mix. I think the real key with redevelopment, I hope we will see redevelopment. I think there's tremendous opportunity across our state because land is scarce, right? As you mentioned, Diane, we are the most densely populated state in the nation. Land is scarce. But there is a tremendous opportunity through the redevelopment of either abandoned or underutilized retail centers and either abandoned or underutilized corporate centers. And so there's a tremendous opportunity there. The key there is it takes partnership between the property owners and the municipalities to make that happen. But there are things, if that's something municipalities want to see happen, that they can do through legislative action to make it enticing for those owners to pursue redevelopment of their property. So ideally, yes, we're going to see a lot of redevelopment. We will also see some new development, I think, certainly. But to do this well, it really needs to be a balance of the two. And doing things like this and explaining the benefits to those property owners. And there was a question in the Q&A, and there was also a comment that the chat's disabled, so folks can put their questions in the Q&A. But one of the questions was, how can municipalities engage with nonprofits to learn more? Great question. If your municipalities want to learn more, they can, by all means, I would encourage them to reach out directly to Fair Share Housing. They can reach out to myself or the local Habitat affiliate in their county. If they don't know, by all means, you all have my information now. You can reach out and I will get them plugged in with the right person. They can also reach out to the network is a great resource because the network represents 230 community developers across the state, and they can get people plugged in. We are also doing outreach directly to municipalities, but there's 564 of them. So it often is easier if municipalities are interested. I don't know of a nonprofit developer who would not jump at the chance to talk to a municipality who is interested in exploring partnership. So if you have a connection with a municipality, or you want to make a suggestion to your local municipality, suggest that they get in touch with whoever the local nonprofits are who work in your county. If you don't know who those nonprofits are, I'm going to again say reach out to the network, and Matt and Stacy and the team at the network will be more than happy to get you connected to the local developers in your community.
Thank you, Scott. Oh, Diane, may I just add, I did just want to tee up something that we are working on on a municipal guide of network approved nonprofit developers. So that's going to be really important. But to broker those relationships is really essential. It's kind of working with your contacts, reaching out to any of our organizations who can really direct you, put you in the right direction.
Thank you, Matt. Just so you know, if there's a couple of questions in the Q&A, can we get a copy of this presentation? Yes, we'll be forwarding a copy of the slides to you, and the slides have links that you can open their articles and their various information sources so you can find out more about the things that were included in the presentation. We've got a question from Catherine Abbott. She's asking in the Q&A, what is the difference between Section 8 housing and the very low housing?
Great question. So Section 8 housing is a specific housing program that is for very low income residents. So low income is below 30% of what's called 30% of the area median income. So that chart that Diane put up before, low income housing is for those who earn less than 30% of the area median income. Section 8 housing is a program, a rental subsidy program designed to meet the needs of low income. So it is one of the programs designed for that income bracket. It is not the only program.
Okay. Tariq, do you have anything to add to that?
No, Scott was spot on with that answer. Thank you, Scott.
Okay. Matt, anything you want to add? Okay.
No, that was nothing would answer there.
Okay. We've got a question from Joan Peters. She says, how do you counter the argument about overcrowding the schools? I know our town focuses on senior housing for that reason. And she says, not affordable. So I'm guessing the senior housing they're creating is not affordable. Anybody want to jump in on that?
I can speak broadly about that. This is really where, we have to understand that, there are various entities that have jurisdiction over municipalities, have jurisdiction over counties. They have to work together. It's not acceptable to hear from a school board or from a town council that, these numbers are just going to place a burden on this entity or that, and that's why it's not going to be workable. It has to be a relationship that exists between the two entities. But there's also there is some pushback on the wisdom that affordable homes greatly increase school-age children. In fact, there was a report out of Rutgers Center for Real Estate just a few years ago that kind of debunked the idea that school-age children are the result of affordable homes in municipalities. Of course, it does depend on the types of homes that you build to meet your affordable housing requirement, whether it's a mixture of family units, senior wraparound housing, 100% affordable, accessory dwelling units. So it really is going to depend. But that's a conversation that really does need to happen with the various points of leadership within your community. And a redeveloper or a nonprofit developer, someone like Habitat, can really help you through that process.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that, Matt's spot on in all of that, is most of the research would suggest that all of those negative things don't actually bear out. But the other thing is, if school crowding is a real concern, right? If impact on infrastructure is a real concern, then what I would suggest and what I suggest to municipalities is embrace your affordable housing numbers and find ways to meet your affordable housing obligations through development of 100% affordable projects. Because where you have real impact is where you see what's called the inclusionary method of achieving affordable housing, which is the 4-to-1 number that Diane talked about before, where through inclusionary methods, you have to take 4 units of market rate housing, which typically has a much higher load of children in it than the single affordable unit you're getting in return for those 4 units of market rate housing. So if your municipality has a 500 unit obligation, if you build all 500 units affordably with a mixture of senior housing, veteran housing, ADUs, um, ownership units, like you can get that number, the number of units that are actually going to be having families in them is probably going to be it's going to be a percentage of them, not all 500. But if you just do those 500, what you're not going to end up with is the 2,000 units of market rate housing, which will have a very high percentage of families with children in them. So if schools are a concern, you approach it by building the affordable housing, embracing that obligation, minimizing the market rate development, and use all the great strategies A4S50 has in it, which will actually reduce the impact on things like school systems.
Good information, yes, and there are things built into that bill. And yet again, bonus credits can reduce a town's affordable housing obligation by up to 25%.
Correct.
Something to think about too.
Yep, absolutely.
Tariq, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, it's just that there's no evidence to support that affordable housing units is going to put an extra strain on the educational systems, especially when it's done responsibly, and those numbers are pretty much taken into effect when a town's required unit amount is calculated.
Okay, great. We've got a question from Lois Keeley. She says, I served on a Mount Laurel committee decades ago, and I learned about how wealthy communities can switch their fair share to poor communities, like Rumson did to Long Branch. It sounds as if this might still be a component of the new law, yes or no? I believe what Lois is talking about is something that used to be called regional contribution agreements, and I believe those were outlawed in the early 2000s. Does somebody want to pick that up?
Happy to. Yes, A500 was the bill number, and I think that was 2008 when regional contribution agreements were banned legislatively. And this new legislation, A4S50, reaffirms that ban. And I should have noted that A4S50 also permanently abolishes the Council on Affordable Housing, which was kind of a political football, I think, as you all might have gathered, for a really long time. So that's it. It abolishes the Council on Affordable Housing in lieu of this new accepted methodology, and it ends that practice of regional contribution agreements, where you saw wealthy towns just shipping their obligations in the form of cash to the nearest lower income municipality, which puts added strain on the receiving end on the receiving municipality, because they are now on the hook for affordable homes. But then of course it also just perpetuates the economic segregation that exists in New Jersey.
Right, which is why the state outlawed it. I think it was a good thing that they did, right? Anybody else?
Thank you, Speaker Roberts. Yes.
Anyone else? Tariq, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's exactly correct. That was outlawed, and it's no longer concerned. But at one time, towns were using it to skirt their obligations.
Yes, I read many articles about that way back in the early 2000s. We have a good question from JJ Mistretta. What about Wall Street LLCs buying up a lot of our properties across the state and jacking up sales and rents? What can be done? Anybody want to jump in on that?
Go for it,
Scott,
Matt.
there's so much to say. Hey, JJ, how are you? There's so much to say about that, and there's so many ways to approach it. I can only point to really where the network is placing its advocacy, really in the moment. We are looking to strengthen the state's Abandoned Property Rehabilitation Act, which empowers communities to acquire vacant and abandoned properties. And we want them to go another step, which would give nonprofits, specifically nonprofit affordable home developers, the right of first refusal. So it would really, repurpose those properties into not only conforming use, but also productive use through affordable homes. Yeah, right. There are outside investors that are absolutely infiltrating the state, and there is legislation that we could all use some advocacy around, and that's a bill that's led. It's sponsored by Majority Leader Senator Teresa Ruiz and Senator Shirley Turner, who represents Mercer County, and that's S2164. And what that would basically do is it would expand property owner LLC liability and transparency, and effectively it would empower municipal code officials to hold accountable the principals of LLCs who are in violation of health or other municipal code violations. That's just the first step. I mean, that is just a very, very superficial approach to dealing with this issue. So I would definitely look toward some seasoned developers as well to have some ideas about that. So I would defer to my esteemed colleagues here as well.
It is spot on that it is a big it is a big part of the problem in our state currently. There are no simple answers to it because of how our state and federal government's laws work around business around limiting or allowing business transactions. There's no simple answer. There are things to do that can be done to make it less appealing for these landlords to have to do it. Newark is trying some stuff with requiring all property owners to have a local address. So trying to have all LLCs that are buying properties to have disclosure of the addresses and to have local addresses. That's an issue that Newark's attempting. We'll see if it works. There's also things, as Matt talked about, different bills that affect the accountability of those owners. There's different things around rent leveling and rent controls, issues around whether short-term rentals are allowed in your municipality or not, because the short-term rental market is also driving a great deal of the housing stock being bought up by corporations to serve sites like Airbnb and VRBO and different things. So it's a really thorny issue, but it is absolutely causing a big part of this need. But yeah, there is unfortunately no simple answer. The other thing that we can advocate for, and we certainly as nonprofit developers have been advocating for this, is funding at the state level for property acquisition and land banking. And so, if what either municipal governments, county governments, or if they can provide funding to the nonprofit entities for property acquisition, there's a lot of resources available for to help with the development of affordable housing. There's very limited access to equity and capital for property acquisition. And so often, a lot of times, I know when we bid on properties, we are outbid by private equity and LLCs because we don't have the type of access to fast capital and low cost capital that they have access to. And so it's another advocacy point of having our elected officials make resources available to be able to acquire properties, to keep them out of the hands and then put them into the hands of developers who can redevelop responsibly.
Thank you, Scott. Nuran, do we have to end this now, or can we take a few more minutes for more questions?
We definitely have time to answer more questions. We have until 8:30, so
okay, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
that's absolutely wonderful. Fabulous. Yeah. Okay, we've got another question, from Roseanne Magaldi, how does a community development corporation fund the creation of affordable housing in a community? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I guess as the resident CDC, I'll give a first stab, and then Matt and Tariq can certainly jump in. So the funding, or what we talk about putting the capital stack together, very much depends on where the type of housing you're developing. And so there are various government subsidy programs at the local level, the county level, the state level, and then the federal level. There's kind of four different streams of government funding that come into play. Whether it's most municipalities in the state have what's called a local affordable housing trust fund. There's the state's affordable housing trust fund. There are then federal programs, the federal home program, the federal low-income housing tax credit program, the federal new market tax credit program. At the state level, we also have the Aspire program. So there are all these various funding streams that will fund different types of development. Some fund rental housing, some fund home ownership units, some fund very small projects, some fund only large projects. And so what developers tend to end up doing is, based on what we're trying to develop, we apply for the different resources for funds that are applicable to the types of units that we're trying to develop to put the funding stack together. With affordable home ownership, one of the things we also is the actual sales price of the home comes into that funding stack as well, because the homes are being sold at an affordable price, which is typically, these days, we're seeing, to make a house affordable, you're selling it for about 25% of the cost to develop, is about the ratio right now. So you've got to come up with the other 75%. And then a lot of nonprofit CDCs like Habitats are also bringing philanthropic dollars into the equation. So most of our projects right now, our typical funding stack, we look to have about 50 to 60% of the funding coming in from government funding, about 25% of the funding coming from the sale of the home, and then the balance coming from philanthropy.
Okay. Tariq? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
No.
Yeah,
No, please, you're the expert.
go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Tariq. I'm sorry. No, I did just want to piggyback on what Scott said. I mean, it really, again, it's the reason why it's so important. This really illustrates the reasons why it's so important to connect with particularly smaller nonprofit developers, because they really know their financing, and they have to know their funding sources, because everything really needs to add up. I think there was a question in the chat that suggested that, developers have to build high density in order to make affordable homes more financially viable. And while that may be true strictly from a volume standpoint, it's terrible planning, because then you do just kind of have a haphazard housing number placed in your community, because you have to meet a certain requirement, and certainly it's not the only way to do it. I can give a few examples, but it depends on every single development. But for example, one of our members, and I do have some case studies in front of me, which I'm happy to share. But one of our members who operates down the shore, the Affordable Housing Alliance, JJ, you're familiar with them. I'll give an example of a project that they did in Millstone. It was 10 one-bedroom apartments. It was housing for very, very low and moderate income seniors. This project was just completed in the last few years. I should note also that the mayor and town council and state legislators are, it's a bipartisan mix. So everybody was really on board here, though. The committed funding sources for this 10 home project was the Affordable Housing Trust Fund through the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, Monmouth County Home Funds, the Federal Home Loan Bank of New York, and Millstone Township, which supplied the land and had dollars from their municipal housing trust funds. Another example is the National Housing Trust Fund, which is a very valuable tool for depending on the development that you're doing. But if you have a single family to three apartment conversion, for example, you can use funds through the National Housing Trust Fund, and that comes with a voucher, which is increasingly rare, and particularly whatever comes from the federal government, moving forward. So. But just to that point, though, I mean, that's why it's so important to speak with people like Scott, because they just know every single avenue to make the numbers add up and to make the project work.
Tariq, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I'd just like to note that right now in the city of Newark, they have the Newark Land Bank. So that helps people get access to properties, not the big developers, but more so lower income individuals that are trying to get home ownership. I know they're also working with the Nehemiah group out of Brooklyn, out of New York, and they've actually developed over 4,000 affordable housing units, and they're working on a project in Newark right now. It's a smaller unit, I think 42 units, but they're also interested in scattered sites, so that avoids that density piece. So those are some of the methods that they're using to try to get the affordable housing in without having that density, without having that overburdening of certain neighborhoods. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that and give a shout out to the city of Newark and Mayor Baraka and everything that administration's been doing over the past 4 or so years on this topic. If you're in a municipality and you're wondering how do we attack this in a responsible way and how do we use legislation to stop bad development and to promote good development, and get our resources working effectively, the Newark has a great playbook right now. So they're the only functional land bank in the state. They require all municipal land that is going to be sold to be used for affordable housing purposes or community benefits. They're very forward thinking. So just kudos to the city of Newark, and they're a great blueprint for the other 563 municipalities in the state.
It's great to know that we have good examples here, right? In our research, one of the things we discovered is in round 3, there's a Jersey City waterfront development that is going to be 35% affordable housing. I believe they snagged a $10 million grant because of that higher set aside. It's basically 3 to 1, right? Or 1 to 3 if you want to look at it that way.
Absolutely. Jersey City's been very aggressive with their inclusionary zoning rules.
And I'd like to jump in on that. I know that Mayor Fulop takes credit for that. Quite frankly, I'd just like to add that New Jersey Together, Jersey City Together, were the actually driving force behind that. Initially, the city wanted 20% affordability. Jersey City Together, New Jersey Together, which is a subsidiary of the Industrial Areas Foundation, actually fought for that 35% stake. So they've been at the forefront of that fight. So that's I forget exactly how many units, but it's an ongoing project that's going to present actually help, I think, establish maybe 4,000 units or so over time.
Yeah, so it just shows that if you're interested in advocating, that you can have an impact on what's going to happen in your municipality. So that's why it's important to get educated and get informed about this, and then to be involved in this process. It's happening right now, and we can get in there and make our voices heard and have a positive impact for our town, right? That's what this is about. So we've got a question from Amalia Duarte. She says, can you talk redevelopment of single family to duplexes? Does anybody want to jump in on that? So I guess taking a piece of land that's maybe zoned for single family, changing the zoning so that you could develop a duplex or maybe a triplex on it or something.
Yeah, So the real advocacy issue that comes there, and we are certainly proponents for this, is to abolish single-family zoning throughout the state, which is the key thing there. Most of the states, especially in the suburbs, our suburbs are all have single-family zones that only allow you to have a single-family house on any lot with minimum lot sizes. So the key thing to advocate for if we want to see redevelopment from single family to duplex or triplex, even with the advent of ADUs, was just sort of a small step in that direction. It's a little bit different, but it is a step. Is the abolishment of single family zoning and minimum lot sizes, which would allow the redevelopment. California's done this, Oregon's done this with great success to be able to address their affordable housing needs and spur better land use.
Okay, anybody else want to jump in on this?
I'll just mention that the governor in his State of the State address did give a shout out to zoning reform that would provide more leeway for municipalities to do single family to two family conversions. This is a huge step. He also talked about reducing parking requirements, which would also be big from a development standpoint as well. But to be able to, in towns with diverse housing stock, single family, multifamily, and apartments, garden apartments, apartment buildings, a lot of that zoning that exists underlying is a lot of those housing types are non-conforming to the underlying zoning, and so if something happened to that two-family duplex, they may have to seek a variance in order to rebuild that because it might be zoned for single-family zoning. So to Scott's point, it's really important that towns are going to have that type of guidance from the state and can rezone as necessary.
Anyone else have any information they'd like to add to what Matt said?
No, Matt and Scott covered it quite eloquently.
Okay. Eileen Khan, our social justice chair, is asking, it looks, she's saying, are experts such as you being asked to speak at town and city councils and planning boards to provide information and advice?
No.
Anybody? Oh, okay.
We're working.
Well,
I mean, I know myself and my peers are all using this opportunity that A4S50 provides to do a lot of outreach to municipalities to explain, to help them understand the network and fair share together put out a great guide on the whole A4S50 and how municipalities can leverage it. And so we are working using that as a tool to try and get invitations and create opportunities for those conversations. So that I think like that's another place where grassroots advocacy, right? Voters matter. So this is my plug for all of us as voters, right? Us sending a letter, if there's a municipality who's interested and is forward thinking, they may or may not decide to take us up on the offer. But I did have a chance just 2 weeks ago to speak to a municipality who has been, I don't want to say they've been anti-affordable housing, but it is not a place that has ever been willing to talk to CDCs about affordable housing. And the reason they talked to me and they reached out to me is because one of their residents called up the business administrator and said, you need to talk to him. And because, right, politicians will listen to the people who vote for them, right? And they will listen to the people who vote for them far more than they will listen, frankly, to Matt or I. Right? Well, they may listen to us, but like they will have the conversation because their voters want them to have the conversation. So if you want your township to have conversations with people like Matt and Al Tariq and I, and that you want them to invite us to the table, they are far more likely to do that if you as the voter, is the community member, shows up at the planning board meeting, shows up at the council meeting and says, what are you doing about the round 4 requirement our town has, and what nonprofit CDC are you talking to partner with?
And with these incentives that are built into A4S50, it just makes sense. I mean, if you can get bonus points, that's a good thing, right?
Yes. And let me add also that Evesham Township has actually invited us to come and speak at their city council meeting in support of their initiative for affordable housing. And we recently, 2 weeks ago, met with I know it's another state, but Philadelphia city officials who are interested in what we had to say.
Well, that's
I will just say-
encouraging to hear.
It is. I will just say from an advocacy standpoint, so we are monitoring the New Jersey, there's a, I can't share the link here, but the New Jersey courts, njcourts.gov/courts/civil/affordable-housing, for those keeping score at home, is tracking. So those key dates that Diane had reported out on before that time frame of benchmark dates that municipalities have to meet. That's something from an advocacy standpoint, we keep our eye on, and we make sure that the municipality is keeping up with that. So January 31st, for example, next week is when municipalities have to indicate either that they accept the numbers that DCA gave them, or that they are going to, offer a modification or enter into the what's called the Affordable Housing Dispute Resolution Program that the state set up as part of A4S50. So it's a lot of fun, actually. Perhaps we can share that link later, but you can look through your county and you can see which municipalities have passed a resolution in support. So I do want to give a shout out to Wayne Township for accepting its numbers.
I was there when it happened, so
Thank you, Diane.
there were a bunch of us that were there. So. We've got a question. Oh, I'm sorry, Tariq, would you like to add something to that?
No, I have everything to add. Thank you.
Okay. We've got a question from Peter Spool. He says, what incentives are now available for the construction of mixed income housing developments? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I will jump in. Unfortunately, not enough. The majority of incentives right now are just for the low income units within, so low income being for those below 80% AMI. HMFA is trying, I don't know if it's launched yet, but they've been talking about launching a workforce program, and workforce housing is targeting between 80 and 80% AMI and 120% AMI. So they are talking about launching a workforce program, which is hugely needed in our state, is to do workforce housing, because that's what we call the missing middle in the housing equation. Is if you follow all the math and numbers Diane was talking about, to afford to enter into the market rate home ownership space in New Jersey, you need to be making somewhere between 120 and 150% of the AMI. And so, right, there is subsidized housing, not enough of it, but we're working at it to try and create more units at below 80%. Once you get to kind of 120 to 150, you can afford to buy housing on the market. But there really is no housing on the market anywhere for people earning between 80 and 120% AMI. So that's a struggle when it comes to mixed income development. At the high end, people can afford to buy in. You can get subsidy for the low end, but it's really hard to have a good mixed income development because it's hard to make the middle make sense and pencil out from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, and again, that workforce housing program is separate from affordable housing, and it is the 80 to 120%. And in the presentation, there are a number of links to articles. Towns have been working on this to help keep their police and fire and teachers, people like that, and keep them from moving to other states or other places in the state to make it affordable for them. And this is now a push in New Jersey because the talk is about how do we make the state more affordable for all the people that live here. So, anybody want to add anything else?
Nothing
Okay.
from.
Okay. let's see, what else do we have? We've got a question from Marsha Bloomberg. What role do you think racism plays in the pushback that some communities are experiencing when they hold a public presentation on affordable housing? Does
I-
anybody want to jump?
To be honest, I think a lot. I think, right, we are the most densely populated state in the nation. We have some of the most progressive housing laws in the nation, now that are getting even better with A4 S50. And we are also the most segregated state in the nation. And that is something we have to reckon with as a state, is that we continue to be one of the most segregated states in the nation. And I think we are foolish if we don't think that racism is playing a big piece in this. And so I would encourage us all on that. It kind of goes back to some of my opening comments. Don't let the conversation, and if you're in the room, don't sit by quietly when that conversation happens. And don't let it be about them. Like, let's make the conversation about us, right? Put a name to that face, right?
Yes.
Right. Put a name to that face that we're talking about, right? It is our teachers. It is the people taking care of our parents in assisted living. It is the people serving us our coffee. It is our firefighters. It is our EMS workers. Like, pick the name, like seriously, like bring a picture, pick a name, right? And let's have conversations about people and not about facts and figures.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. Anybody want to add anything else to that?
Oh yes, sadly, discrimination is alive and well. Um, Redlining, a lot of these disproportionate situations. It's direct result of racism, and it needs to be addressed on. I second Scott's position on this. Just the conversation needs to be held, and thank you for the person that asked the question. That great question. It's something that really needs to be looked at because there is the NIMBY crowd that still exists in so many different communities, and when they talk about affordability, the first thing they think is not just income requirements or income levels. So it's definitely part of the picture, a large part, unfortunately.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
100% it plays a role. And that's, I think, there's a certain level of education and there's a certain level of, that's something that, municipalities, communities are going to have to contend with because it exists and it's real. I mean, we wouldn't be in this position, we wouldn't need an A4 S50 if our state weren't so segregated economically, I mean, so this is really cleaning up the mistakes of the past, when it comes to development areas that are segmented off from other communities, when it comes to redlining, when it comes to roadways, bifurcating communities, so many things that this is, and that's why, in this law, it's so important that you can really take a scalpel to a larger problem and really be creative, nuanced, and integrative. That's going to be the most important thing, I think, to move forward. But yeah, 100%. There's no denying.
Okay. Good information and from our experts. We've got a question from Maria Huega. To any and all panelists, can you share options available under the new legislation which allow underserved minority families currently residing in a given municipality to be given priority in qualifying for newly built affordable housing in their hometown, particularly if they have been displaced through gentrification?
I'll start. Altric or Matt, please jump in on this. So affordable housing in the state of New Jersey for fair share obligations is governed by something called UHAC, the Universal Housing Affordability Controls, which are also currently being revised as a result of this bill. This bill called for them to be revised. That process is going on this year. And currently in the UHAC rules, they actually explicitly forbid that. And it's a topic of great debate and consternation of how do we support local residents in municipalities who have been displaced, who are being gentrified out of municipalities, and how do we also prevent discrimination? And it is a very thorny issue, but it's something we need to lean into. And I think we need to create provisions within this, and this is something we need to be talking about more, and we are talking about it. Is how do we take a scalpel to again, A4S50 lets us take a scalpel to certain things and really like weed this out. This is an issue that needs to be weeded out a little bit better, because currently it's kind of a, a blunt force.
Okay, does anybody else?
I
Well,
just add quickly, oh, I'm sorry,
no, go ahead, Matt.
no, I was just going to point to Jersey City. So, municipalities can take initiative. Jersey City does have an ordinance, I think, that allows for residential preference for non-state or federal subsidized developments. I'm trying to think of smaller, for those of you in Mercer, the housing initiatives of Princeton, I believe, did add to the municipal affordable home inventory, but did not, because of the preferential marketing, it could not go through, UHAC, as Scott mentioned. So there are ways that municipalities can do that, and certainly there are builders, developers, smaller developers
And we've
know
done
how to
it.
do that.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
can do it. We know how to do it, and that's the Matt just hit on the key point. You can only do it if you don't take state funding. And so we've done it when we've partnered with municipalities, and that's what we say is, right, you've got to put right that 50 to 60% of the government money we need, you've got to put that in. And if the local municipality has the resources in their local trust fund to put that money into the development, then they are legally allowed to prioritize their residents. And we've done that successfully with municipalities, but it's often difficult for municipalities to come up with all of that money and not stack the state money on it.
Tariq, anything to add?
Yeah, I just want to add that the city of Newark, they have a program where they've helped people turn Section 8 vouchers into mortgages. They've also urged developers to partner with CDCs and nonprofits to develop affordable housing and trying to make sure that Newark residents have the opportunity to get first preference, first right of refusal on some of these properties. So that's just some of the elements. And that Newark Land Bank is really effective in helping people, first-time home buyers, first-generation home buyers, get those properties and possibly not being priced out of their own neighborhoods.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to say it's 8:30. There are many more questions I'm sure we all have. Those of you who are attending, you will get a copy of this slide presentation. There are links that can give you more information that can be helpful to you. Thank you so much to Matthew Hirsch from Housing and Community Development Network of New Jersey, their VP of Policy and Advocacy. Thank you to Al-Tariq as well, Al-Tariq Witcher, who is the Managing Director of External Affairs for Fair Share Housing Center. And thank you to Scott Millard, the CEO of Passaic County Habitat for Humanity. You've given us a lot of really good information and a lot of things to think about. And if this is an issue you care about, you can advocate for it. It's happening right now in your town. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Have a good
Thank you.
evening,
Thank you, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar now.
Okay. Thank you,
All right.
Nard.
Thank you.
Was this completely recorded?